Pow!
Kerplop!
Boff!
Hey guys, welcome back. It's the Uncanny Comic League here. I'm Jason.
And I'm Ryan, and today we have a special guest on the show, Dan. And today what we are going to be discussing is the AvX event. It has just come to an end, and we're going to give you our thoughts on, was it worth the money? Was it worth it at all, really? Or was it worth reading? Just how it affected comics in general. We're going to cover it. And alright, so Jay's got some points, so let's just get into it, alright?
Yeah, well, again, there was I guess there were two new comics that they sort of introduced for it, right? There was the rounds.
Yes.
And there was versus.
Yes.
So now Ryan and I read all of it, all the tie-ins and everything. Dan, I know you mostly just read.
I read the rounds and the few books I was reading before going into the event.
Okay, so as an impression for someone who didn't necessarily see everything that went on, from what you read, what are your general impressions?
Well, the tie-ins are pretty much completely unnecessary unless you're going for the books you really like. And the one they came up with, the AvX, where it was just
the A versus X. This one,
the versus series, where it's just battles between specific characters, but there's no real story behind it.
No, there isn't any story. Their reasoning for that was because they said they didn't, in case people weren't interested in the story, they just wanted the fights. They were supposed to be mainly based out of the rounds, was when those fights took place. Like if you notice in some of the rounds, you'd see like repeated scenes like from a different angle per se.
Yeah, I was really hoping that the versus would actually have some sort of consequence. Like, not every fight was just sort of like, oh, boom, boom, and this person wins, but they're just going to leave them lying there so they can recover and fight back next week over and over again. I was hoping that there was going to be some sort of like someone gets killed in it, or have an effect on the main story, because they launched it just for this event, right?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about how the event kind of went down. It started with the Phoenix Force coming to Earth, and everyone's kind of freaking out, saying, "What is this thing going to do when it gets here?" Right?
Yeah.
And then there was Hope, and she was the one that they all suspected that the Phoenix
You know
Force
what?
was coming.
Speaking of Hope, other than the way it ended, she really didn't have that big of an effect at all. I mean, like the Phoenix took the Phoenix 5, and I guess Cyclops was the main guy. If I'm to argue with somebody till I'm blue in the face about the series, I know they said it was about Hope, but Cyclops was the main guy. Like, it was centered around Cyclops for
it was
the majority of the story.
But like you said, it started weird. There was Hope and there was Cyclops, and then sort of the focus of the villain kept changing. Like there was the Mr. Sinister arc, which I thought was really good, but then they moved past that, and then it was the Hellfire Club shows up again. You're like, oh, it's gonna be that, and it's like they needed to cover every single possible villain that could be involved.
The Hellfire Club was like one issue.
Yeah.
And then the tie-in ended there. So you know, I mean, maybe they were introducing them for something that's coming up in Marvel now. But I want to ask you guys a question. How does this change the way you look at Marvel? Does it change anything to you? Is it something that you're gonna remember like 10 years down the road? Like, man, remember when that happened in AvX?
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about the big events that have changed coming out of this book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, there was the death of Charles Xavier by Cyclops, right?
Seen it before.
I know now. Xavier's died many times, but but I think this time it's gonna stick, you know.
Yeah, I agree. This time it should.
It should stick.
If that was the only big death, it better stick, or wouldn't it make this redundant, or wouldn't it make it pointless, right? So okay, and then they had at the beginning they had that team that went into space. I have another stack in my hand for the people at home. Like that's only part of it. So I want to show you this stack because I'm getting tired of holding it. Actually, what I'm going to do is let's just put it on the table.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of
how many books this
big the event was. So I was expecting an awful lot out of it.
I'm going to talk about this one here for a second. Secret Avengers. Now, do you guys remember? I don't know if you read this, Dan, but you obviously did. This team that went to space was trying to get a piece of the Phoenix to figure out how they're going to do it. I mean, pointless in its own. Like this issue you know.
I did not read that one.
There was an issue where like Nova had to fly back to his home world. There was another issue where they were showing there was like gambling going on, and a lot of things that had absolutely no effect on the story. It seemed like for the actual core story, there was enough content where they could have done it in half the time.
Yeah, I think we all agreed on they could have maybe did this shortened into a 3-month thing as opposed to having it out to 6.
Like, I mean, longer.
Because with all the crap we're giving it, I do remember at the very beginning, like for the first 2 months, I was really enjoying it.
I was excited.
I thought the issues were moving the story forward.
You have what people call event fatigue, where it's too long, and it's hard to stay interested.
Like, one of the things that stood out for me is at the beginning. I said to you, Jay, at the beginning, you know, if nobody dies or anything anything big happens, I'm going to be really ticked off and disappointed. And tons of comics later, as you can see here, I feel ticked off and disappointed. I mean, this to me, okay, let's compare this to Flashpoint. Like, I'm going to ask you, Dan, because you read Flashpoint. And we know Flashpoint was basically what changed the New 52, and it did. Now, compare this to Flashpoint.
Well,
How do you feel?
Flashpoint was one of the better events we've had in many years.
Yeah.
And unlike Flashpoint, it didn't last for that many months going on, and the books were actually created specifically for the event, where here they took these Avengers books that are already ongoing and they just threw them into the mix. You know?
Yeah, there were a few that seemed to just jump on because it's like, I could talk about it vaguely for a month or two.
And like, here's another thing one thing that bothered me actually is it wasn't really. It's almost like you had to. I know it happens a lot in comics, but it's almost like you had to pick when something happened. I mean, we were going from seeing Nomar with powers to no powers, or Namor, sorry, Namor with powers to no powers, the powers to no powers. Like, did he lose his powers, or did he get them back, or this is before he lost his powers, or during, or after? Like,
yeah, certain Phoenix 5 members kept getting knocked out, but then the next issue they were back, and there was no explanation as to how they got from being captured and or like practically dead to being off running another operation all of a sudden again. So there was a bit of a continuity. I think that just has to do with how many different comics you have to read to absorb the whole story. And
a lot of it, like you said earlier, Dan, it seems like they just threw it in for the sake of throwing it, because a lot of things, like Wolverine and the X-Men, like Avengers Academy, they were only in it for about 4 or 5 issues. And I mean, it seemed like it was just to set you up. Probably, actually, that's exactly what it was, is what I'm thinking, was to set you up to continue to follow that book after it had nothing to do with AvX. A prime example right here. This guy, the Protector. Apparently he turned on them at one point and was working with Captain Marvel and Mrs. Marvel, and he was a traitor. But all of a sudden that got swept under the rug. And like, he's not, like, you guys kicked him out of the group. He's not around anymore. Like, they just didn't say anything. And then all of a sudden Miss Marvel's cool with Rogue, and she's working down here fighting Rogue, and she's working for the Avengers. But up here she turned on them. So when in this time frame was everything cool? Made cool again. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, things like that make it confusing.
Got dropped and just sort of moved on.
And just moved on and swept under. Now.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I just wish there had been something more cohesive of the story moving forward. Because there was that middle section where I didn't feel like anything was happening. Like, people were having dinner parties and going on dates and like. Yeah,
the dating and.
So we had to care about their relationships and like the squabble in the middle of the fight in that last issue with Spider-Woman and Hawkeye, where it's like, where did this come from? This has nothing to do, no relevance at all to the story. And it's supposed to be at the climax of it.
Now, if I was to pick an issue out of this event that I'd say was my favorite, I'd have to say it's the Jailbreak episode. Or comic. I call it episode because that's what it feels like to me. It just was a giant episode. It's in here somewhere, just trust me.
Which was New Avengers?
I believe it's New Avengers 29. It is in here. Oh wait, hang on. I think
we don't need to find the specific, but yeah.
You know what? I'm not even going to be able to find it, but just trust me, it's in there. And it was a really well written one.
Yeah, it's not to say that the whole event was a bust. There were
some good
stuff.
issues. Like the Avengers Academy run was good.
Yes.
I just don't feel like it necessarily mattered that it needed to be in there, but it was good. I enjoyed it. It wasn't in there that long, so I can't really. But what other things do we have there?
So, I mean, there's now that this is over, the proper AvX event is over. There's the fallout from it. There's the new books that are coming out. Most notably, I guess, Consequences is the first one, the 5 run, and then that leads into Marvel Now, which is going to be a whole bunch of new releases.
And you know some of the titles that are coming from Marvel Now.
Yeah, so like one of the titles spinning out of this is called All New X-Men. It's written by Bendis, and they're taking X-Men from the past and they're bringing them to the future, to the current time now. So like Jean Grey is going to be coming back,
alive again,
and then maybe Xavier, even though Xavier just died, they'll take him from the past and they'll bring him back to the front. Another book that I'm really interested in is the 2 Avengers books by Hickman. So Bendis has run on Secret Avengers and New Avengers, or that's coming to close, and then Hickman, who's on Fantastic Four right now, is going to switch over to that. I think that's going to be pretty good.
And we got Remender leaving one of my favorite comics, the Uncanny X-Force, to do Uncanny Avengers. I believe that's the one he was doing.
I think, yeah, he might be doing more than.
Oh no, I know that's. I think he's doing more than one title, but I know that's one of the ones that I heard. I don't know what else he's doing.
Well, and I know. Obviously, I felt a little jaded from Marvel overall. We put a lot of trust into this event. We tried to absorb the whole thing. Yeah. We were left a little disenfranchised, but you were excited not to really pick up anything, and then I believe Dan just told us the new Thunderbolts is going to be one of the new titles coming out too.
This out there,
and Deadpool's in there, so.
I gotta put this out there. In our last video, in the cost-cutting video, a couple videos ago, I said, I'm not gonna get anything from Marvel Now. And really, I didn't plan on it. But Deadpool is restarting. I did say I was gonna get Deadpool, but then I got new information. And Deadpool is going to be a part of the Thunderbolts, which is Deadpool,
She-Hulk,
or Red Hulk.
Oh, Red Hulk, sorry. Punisher, Elektra, I think. No, maybe some. Or Venom.
Venom. His Cable's not in that.
No, Cable's not on that one.
But he's in another X-Force group. Yeah. But, so I will.
At least one.
Yeah. So I am a huge Deadpool fan. Everybody knows that. So I am getting Deadpool. And I will be getting Thunderbolts, because Deadpool's in it. So I will be reading some Marvel Now and continue with Captain Marvel and Uncanny X-Force and all that.
And the one I thought I was really interested in, from the sounds of it, might be Avengers Arena. It sort of sounds like, it's been described as like a battle royale or a Hunger Games style with basically the Avengers Academy kids and stuff like that, which through AvX Avengers Academy was probably the best actual series straight through. As far as being consistent, I don't remember any issues where I was angry after I read it.
I do have to ask you one favor though, Marvel. I know going into this Marvel Now, Deadpool was at $2.99, and I'm calling you out right now on camera that book needs to stay at $2.99. And it would be really nice if the Thunderbolts were $2.99. That might be a stretch for you guys, but please leave Deadpool at $2.99, please. Is there anything else you guys want to add? I mean, I guess the last question is that I could really throw out. Was this worth the money? I think when we totaled it up, it was about $300 for everything together.
Yeah, if you got all the tie-ins.
If you got all the tie-ins. If you got variants, I feel sorry for you, because if you were getting tie-ins with the variants, then it was more than that. Now, how do you guys feel about this event? Was it worth the money? Was it worth the read? Is it something that you would think 10 years down the road you'd want to read again or talk about it?
Well, I mean, if you just read the main event, it's not too bad, and you can rip through it really quickly. As it compares to all of Marvel's previous events, I mean, it's about equal to some of them, you know. So I mean, it was okay. It wasn't a complete letdown, but then again, I didn't read all the tie-ins and all that. We wasted through all that stuff.
I definitely learned a lesson. This, I think, is the biggest event I've ever read, and I don't think Marvel is going to get us buying all the tie-ins ever again.
Yes.
I'd still be interested in what goes on, but it was a cautionary tale.
And as for the way I look at it, if I'm to pick one of my favorite stories of all time for Marvel, and I think it hammers this one, was X-Men Curse of the Mutants, because I've gone back and read that. But as far as an event is this big, from Marvel, I don't think I'd be on board again. I'm going to throw out a rating on this so you guys can get the exact picture of how I feel of this event so there's no misunderstanding. I'm giving this whole thing here, you see here, a whopping 5.5 out of 10. That's how I'm ending it. On that end note, 5.5, Avengers vs. X-Men, Marvel's big event, built up for 10 years, I give it a 5.5.
Fair enough. I haven't considered a rating. It's probably a little higher than that, but not an awful lot.
I don't know, maybe a 6.5?
Yeah, I think it's about as high as I was willing to go.
6.5? Well, there you've heard it. Thank you, Dan, for being on the show. I'm sure you guys will see him again. I'm sure he'll be back. And from Ryan to
Jason over here and Nate behind the camera.
We are the Uncanny Comic League, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.